Well, hello. We've got a full house tonight. We're going to start off. I'm going to go through a little bit of housekeeping issues and tell you what's going on at the branch. And then we'll introduce the speaker, Rick Shaw. And at the very end, I'll come back and tell you who's coming up in the new year. So welcome to the Essex County branch of the Ontario Ancestors, or as some of you may know it as the Ontario Genealogical Society, the November meeting. And I forgot my poppy. I'll have to remember to wear that next time. So anyway, thank you for coming. And I think you're going to enjoy tonight's presentation. Just a couple things. If you're new to the Essex site, if you're ever looking for us, you can go through the head office or society office website, OGS.ON.ca, or directly through our site locally here, Essex.OGS.ON.ca. But more importantly, joining the Facebook group is where we've got over 600 people, I believe, that interact with each other and share ideas and post things. That's also where all the presentation links are as well. We also have Twitter. We have about 500 and some odd followers on Twitter, and we have a number of YouTube site show presentations on there. So we try to be everywhere. And if anyone's really good at social media and wants to get involved, you can do it from home for us. So keep that in mind. Couple of announcements. One, the new year for a lot of us is November 1st to renew. That's when you can start doing it. And if you renew early in November, there's going to be a draw at the end. So sign up early and you may get a chance to win a prize. The other thing that we have going on is if you bring in a new member, you'll only have to pay 50% of the fees, and the new member will only have to pay 50%. So it's kind of a good deal. So just a little bit more on that. That's like joining for $31.50 for the year. And so it's a good deal. So get your ancestors to, not your ancestors, your cousins to come and join and keep up with us, what's going on. Things that we've been doing, we're as opposed to just being on Zoom, but the last Zoom presentation, we had 57 viewers and over 200 people viewed the YouTube meetings after the fact. The nice thing about being live, you can ask questions. So at the bottom of your Zoom, there should be a chat button and you can type questions in and Linda will tabulate, or not tabulate, but will relay them on to the guest speaker either as they go or at the very end. Our cemetery team is wrapped up for the year. We had a great time. We were at Windsor Grove this year, and I would say every week we literally unearthed 4 or 5 headstones that have been buried probably for 50 years at least. So it was kind of fun we felt like archaeologists going in there and digging these up. Over the winter, we hope to transcribe these. There might be, if there's people interested in trying to transcribe the headstones, get in touch with the Essex cemetery person or myself, Essex webmaster. The transcription team, they've actually just finished 4,500 new entries from the St. Joan of Arc and St. Rose sections at Heavenly Rest, and then we hope to have that published by year end. And Linda Urquhart, she was supposed to be away on vacation this summer, golfing and at the cottage, but she was probably doing that, but also typing every night, I believe, digitizing things, indexing a lot, and it's amazing what she's produced. So we're going to send her away again next year too. So anyway, we've been pretty busy. This is just an example of what we dug up a couple of weeks ago. It was literally upside down, buried, and you can see it had been broken. Somebody probably had knocked it over and it got covered up with leaves and dirt over time. So we were prodding along and hit something and dug it up, and we've tried to put it not necessarily back together again, but we at least got some pictures of it. But there's really wasn't much to read on that one, but we're researching it. But that's just one of like 20, 25 that we've dug up. So tonight's presentation, we have Mr. Patrick Shaw, or he goes by Rick. He's he heads up the Detroit Society of Genealogical Research DNA Special Interest Group. And over the last couple of years, I've been going to his workshops 4 times a year, and it's been very educational. So I reached out to him to maybe come and talk to us about the DNA painter, and he agreed, and now he's maybe having second thoughts, but we're glad he's going to be here. So I will get out of here and let Patrick come on with his slides. So Patrick, I think we'll take it away from here, or
okay. Good evening. As David said, I'm Rick Shaw, and I'm on the board of directors for the Detroit Society for Genealogical Research, where one of my roles is I play the leader of the DNA Special Interest Group. It's a pleasure to be in Canada today, even if it's only virtually. My paternal great-grandparents came from Quebec. So now we'll see if I can figure out how to share a screen. Hopefully you're all now seeing a screen that says DNA Painter, not just a pretty picture. Although it is. This happens to be the chromosome map of all my matches on 23andMe. So yes, it does produce a pretty picture. I'm planning on starting today's presentation with a short commercial for DSGR. They pay me extra, you know. I get paid 0, so they're giving me 0 plus 0. And then leap right into the many different facets of DNA Painter. For those of you that did attend Ben Dawson's presentation for the Huron County Group, I'm not going to repeat that presentation. I'll be giving an overview of the entire toolbox that makes up DNA Painter, as well as covering some of the basics of chromosome mapping tool and some of the techniques within that tool that I found to be of extreme value. But first, a word from my sponsor. The Detroit Society for Genealogical Research is the oldest genealogical society in Michigan. We're just across the river from you guys. We were organized in 1936. To find out more about us, please check out our website, www.dsgr.org. It's an easy one to remember. On it are the details for our meeting dates, times, and places. Since the pandemic, our meetings have been all virtual and online, and in our mode of welcoming everyone into our in-person meetings, we also welcome everyone into our online meetings. Those meetings become available to the general public on our website about the week before the meeting to give our members a chance to first hit on it. We've been publishing the Detroit Society for Genealogical Research magazine on a quarterly basis, and the magazine dates back to 1936. All issues of that magazine are on our website, as are a number of other major publications. The indexes to the magazines and those publications are on the website and available to the general public. But if you really want to get into the nits and grits, you got to become a member. The Detroit Society for Genealogical Research works hand in hand with the Burton Historical Collection. It is one of the most important private historical collections in the country. It is housed within the main Detroit Public Library on Woodward, right across from the Detroit Institute of Arts. It is where the Detroit Society of Genealogical Research meets, well, a floor below, when we can. The Burton Historical Collection started out as just maintaining information about the city of Detroit and its inhabitants. But Clarence Burton, who created this collection, soon realized that you can't talk about Detroit without talking about Michigan, the Old Northwest, Canada, and New France. And so the collection just boomed. The pictures you're seeing are of the entrance, which is really lined with card catalogs, because that's how the entire collection is researched by people to find out what they want to look at. But if you turn the corner, this is the reading room. It is lined with 2 levels of books, manuals, journals, and things. But the heart and soul of the Burton Historical Collection occurs 2 floors below this. And the friendly librarians will more than happy to go and grab a manuscript, no matter how old, bring it up, give it to you, where you can read it, copy it, photograph it. Around 2017, the DSGR group, as David said, surveyed our members to see what we wanted to do about DNA. It was becoming a real pain. We were thinking, well, we could have a meeting once a year, and everybody's going, no, that's not enough. And we're going, but we don't want to have, too many meetings on DNA if people aren't interested. So we surveyed our membership. What came out of it was the quarterly DNA special interest groups. We meet quarterly, at least we did before the pandemic. We met in the computer laboratory of the Detroit Public Library. People would bring in their laptops, their tablets, or use the computers in the library, and we'd steal chairs from the main part of the library to bring them in because we had crowds. Topics that were covered include these. We were really quite prolific in things that we would discuss. These were all brought up by our members saying, can we discuss? And we did. And it was an interactive discussion. As David said, they were workshops. People were there busily doing whatever the presentation was, trying it out on their own data. You will notice that DNA Painter appears on this list more than once. It's because Johnny Pearl is very prolific and keeps updating the tool. So enough of this commercial. Let's get into it. When you get into DNA Painter, which is on dnapainter.com, you will be seeing what is known as the DNA Painter dashboard. Now, before we go into it, I have to give you a warning. DNA Painter is a free tool. It is free all across the board. You will never have to pay for it. But if you don't pay, you will be able to store one ancestral tree. Within the What Are the Odds tool, you'll be able to store one genetic pedigree chart. And within the Chromosome Maps, you'll be able to store one map. For the low, low price of just over $4 a month, you can subscribe to DNA Painter. You'll have unlimited access, unlimited storage, and you'll be helping Johnny Pearl keep adding more and more things to this toolbox. Now, I'm going to stop this share. You're going to see me again because we're going to figure out if I can do this one more time. One thing I learned from Ben when I watched his presentation, the best way to look at DNA Painter is to look at DNA Painter. Again, you see that I have a subscription because, well, after you become a subscriber for a long time, Johnny gets nice to you and says, I'll give you a discount. There are 3 basic tools that are available in DNA Painter. There are ancestral trees, there are tools and WATO, meaning what are the odds, and there are chromosome maps. We can quickly look at some of the lesser impacting tools. The ancestral trees, and we'll just open up mine, is nothing more than what you would expect. It is a pedigree chart. If it ever comes up, there we are. And it's a very nice pedigree chart with nice colors. One thing you will notice You can load this pedigree chart from a GEDcom file, which is what I did. From my computer-based genealogy file, I created a GEDcom file and said of my direct ancestors, and then just straight uploaded into this application. This happens to show you 5 generations. It'll expand out, but there's no sense in all of us going blind. What's happened is that since the time that David asked me to do this presentation, Johnny's been busy. He added this thing called DNA filters. Do you ever get an email from somebody that says, we share X DNA, how are we related? And you go, oh yeah, that's the X one. That's right up the mother line, right? Because X is female? Well, not quite. And Johnny helps you figure that out. It lets you use the DNA filter and says, show me the X DNA.
Rick?
Yes.
Yes, there is a question about the tree. They're asking, is the tree visible by other individuals or is it private?
Private.
Okay.
It's unless you decide to share it, it is private. And in this case, since I'm male, my X DNA can only come from my mother. But my mother and all females get their X DNA from their father and their mother. My maternal grandfather got it strictly from his mother, but she got it from her father and mother. So when someone says we share X DNA, it's not just straight up the mother line. All these guys got involved in it too. And if they had siblings, it could be part of their descendants that are involved in the X DNA. Just to keep things on an even keel, the one that everyone thinks is so complex is the mitochondrial DNA. If someone says that you share a mitochondrial DNA, that's straight up the mother line, just the females, all the way up to ancestral Eve. And conversely, the Y DNA path is straight up the father line, all the way up to ancestral Adam. In most cases, this one should all be the same last name. That's pretty much it for what's here, except for one thing that's sort of embarrassing for me. There's this thing called tree completeness. If you click on it, it tells you things like you've got both your parents, you've got all your grandparents, you've got all your great-grandparents. You missed 2 of the second great-grandparents. Well, it goes down to the 8th great-grandparents and tell you you're really doing a bad job. And the one thing that I really like, there are 2 people who appear in your tree more than once. And it gives you a pedigree collapse report. I am my own cousin. I think I should send myself birthday presents. Well, anyways, it'll give you a report of who those people are, where you can then look back and say, oh yeah, how they show up twice. But it will give you this report. That is a number of things. You can play with it. There's a number of other options. Over here, if you have done your mitochondrial and Y DNA testing on family tree DNA, you can load the output of those 2 tests to a third party called MitoYDNA. It's listed in the handout that David's going to make available to you. From that, it creates kits, which Johnny has then said, if you have a kit in MitoYDNA, he'll bring it in, and at which point it will then populate this chart with your haplogroups. We can go back to the dashboard. Get into more fun stuff. The Tools and WATO option. It's really packed because there are really 4 tools here. And we're going to go over 3 of them. There's the Shared CM tool. There's the WATO, or What Are the Odds? And the Cluster Auto Painter. There's the WATO beta version 2, which we're going to skip because in practice is pretty much the same as the WATO. The first foremost and absolute mandatory thing you need to understand is the Shared CM tool. Blaine Bettinger created the Shared CM tool. Back when commercial DNA testing started, Blaine started a group, chart with saying, let me know how many centimorgans you share with your relative that you know is definitely your relative and how you're related to them. And from that, he built this chart, which I go to first and foremost. Someone says, we share 804 centimorgans of DNA. How can we be related? This is my first stop. I'm into DNA Painter with almost every email. We can see here a first cousin, on average, shares 866 centimorgans with the tester. But Blaine didn't want you to freak out because someone says they shared 804 centimorgans. You go, they can't possibly be a first cousin. He's telling you that first cousins in his analysis share anywhere from 396 to 1397 centimorgans. So there's a range. Now, when someone says they share 804 centimorgans, I don't know about you, but I really don't want to have to go through this chart and figure out which of these people are candidates. Well, Johnny Pearl to the rescue. Johnny added this little box at the top where we can just key in 804. And guess what? We look at the chart again. Everybody who couldn't possibly be involved in this relationship has been ghosted out. And only those relatives that could possibly be ours at sharing 804 centimorgans are still lit. Now, the tester is sitting here at self. And if self is 70 years old, common sense says, this is not my great-grandparent sending me an email. This is not my great-aunt and uncle sending me an email. Conversely, if self is 20 years old, the likelihood that this is their great-grandchild or great-grandniece or nephew is not very likely. And it's going to be one of these groups, or it could be up here for the 20-year-old. Again, Johnny to the rescue. With the help of the DNA geek, you got to get into all these people. We find that there's a 95% chance that it's one of these relationships that the 804 will belong to. But yet there's a 5% chance that it's these. When I start looking to see who belongs where, I start with the 95 just because it's a higher hit ratio. And more than likely it was a first cousin. That's one other thing. The Shared CM project is Blaine's project. It's now in version 4.0. I mean, since inception, Blaine has changed this 4 times. Blaine's a worker. He may change it again. You want to keep coming back and seeing what's new. Oh, and Johnny also is a worker. The tool is version 4. He keeps adding things. This did not exist in the first iteration. This did not exist. You just came into here and you just had to start figuring it out for yourself. Things keep being added into this. The next tool where I spent a lot of time is WATO, affectionately referred to as WATO, or what are the odds? To understand it, you have to understand what it's asking about. What are the odds of? It's asking, what are the odds that the tester, person A, who shares DNA with persons B, C, D, E, who are also related to each other, can appear within their pedigree chart. Although I don't know where they would be, where could they be? WATO is a great help if you are unsure of pedigree, unsure of how people link, but it does require you do the genealogy. The genealogy is to come first. This is a tool. This is not genealogy. It is a tool for the genetic genealogists. This is where you create a probability tree. It's very simple. You enter a target name here, which is usually the tester's name. Your research question is, where does tester belong? Or some version thereof. And then you start entering the pedigree chart of the tester's matches and how they relate. You'll start with entering the most recent common ancestor that you have found for these matches. And because you've done the DNA, you can do things like add a child, and you know that the most recent common ancestor had 4 children. And this child had 2 children. And this child had a child. And this child had a child. This child you don't know much about. This child, you happen to know that their name was Kathy. This child, you just edit the name and key him in. It's Fred. We'll put an R in his Fred. But what you also know is that you and Fred share 804 centimorgans. Going down this line is you enter the matching centimorgans. And you just type in 804. Now, surprisingly, Fred has a child who also did a DNA test with 420 centimorgans. Kathy didn't do a DNA test and has no children that did a DNA test that you have found. This person kept private, but they did a DNA test and they shared 840 centimorgans with you. Well, meanwhile, what this is you've built the pedigree chart for your matches. Now you're going to try to ask the question, where does the subject, the tester, fit in? And you do that by doing things like add a child to Kathy. And you go down to the bottom here and say, use as a hypothesis. I can add a child here to Fred's cousin. Use it as a hypothesis. I can add a child to this person who we don't know much about and say, use this as an hypothesis. I can go up a generation and say, use this as an hypothesis. You can do parent and child as a hypothesis. So what this is telling you is that when the score is 0, doesn't belong here. And now in this case, we're getting scores of 1, which says possibility, slight possibility. As you get more testers involved in your pedigree chart, you get a better scoring. To give you an idea, this is a pedigree chart that I created. It took about 2 years to track down this family and find where all of these matches fit in and to explode their family. And not only did I have to go all the way up, I had to go all the way back down and add people. Add the other siblings to the siblings of whom I was showing in here that there were cousins to the tester. Now again, I put in hypotheses. Possible here, 0. Possible here, 0. Possible down here, possibility of 1. Possibility for these 4, 4,523 to 1. The likelihood that the tester belongs here is extreme in one of these 4 spots is extremely high. Again, you've got to do the genealogy. Brother 4 died in 1927, long predating the tester's birth. Not an option. So now what? You've got 4 really good possibilities. You're a genealogist. You do the genealogy. You start tracking down brother 2, 3, 5, and 6. You hope they have descendants that are willing to do DNA tests. And if not, you track them. There are census records, birth, death, marriage records, military records. In the States, there were selective service records when they registered for the draft. Tells you all kinds of information. There's city directories so that you can tell where who lived when, so that you can get an idea of proximity and who might be involved. But all this does is a tool to help you look. And now you start back in doing the genealogy.
Rick?
Yes.
Question on the WATO. On that tool, can you upload a GEDcom file to save time inputting a tree?
No.
No.
But again, you're zeroing in on the folks that you are matches to, and it's their GEDcom that you've created. It's their pedigree chart that you have created. This actually, this research took 2 years because they're non-relatives of, well, not known relatives of the tester. And so everything was really, took 2 years for all these people to show up as DNA tests and then to get them matched in. Anything else?
No, not on this screen. We're good.
Okay, it's really if you're stumped as to how people are related to each other, if you can build this, you can get an idea of where to best look. Now, the entrance to what everyone really wants to start seeing, I'm sure, is the chromosome painter. Now, there's the cluster auto painter. No, you're not, spray painting a bunch of cars in the parking lot. The cluster auto painter, and in case you're not familiar, this is the cluster that we're talking about. This report here. It gives you your matches and it clusters them together in this little boxes of color, and it's it in and of itself is a nice picture. Well, what Johnny has done is said, okay, if you did this with Genetic Affairs, again, one of my favorite app names, MyHeritage, GEDmatch, or DNA-GEDcom, I'm going to take the output and I'm going to create a DNA paint of that entire cluster. To do it, it's really simple. I like the Genetic Affairs one because it's the simplest. But if I can flip back, the most difficult version of it is when you have to go through all 3 steps. With Genetic Affairs, you don't have to. But you need to know that the 3 steps exist. So again, it will only work for the 4 items. You can no longer use it for Ancestry. Ancestry issued a cease and desist order to all third-party genealogy systems. And in fact, even if you had created a Genetic Affairs cluster from Ancestry before the cease and desist was generated, when you try to run it now, it tells you, no, it's from Ancestry, I'm not doing it. At worst case, you have a 3-part request. You enter the tester's gender. I leave this at 7 centimorgans as that's a good cut point. Anything less than 7 is probably noise. You choose a file. You choose the HTML file that came in from the cluster, the one that when you click on it generated this in your browser. If you received a zip file as a response from one of these 3, you need to unzip it into its components and save each file individually, because when you choose a file, you need to choose just that HTML file. Now, depending on which one you use, and Johnny gives you very distinct instructions as to what you need to do. You may also need to bring in a CSV file of your DNA matches that go with that file. And that is strictly a CSV file. Every one of those 4 will create one for you. And it's just a CSV file of your matches. It's a file that if you were to click on it, it would open in Excel. But you just select it and you go on to the next screen, which says create the map. And I leave it always the one, name it. Yeah, I just want to, you call it the same thing it's called as a chromosome and generate the map. And this is the cluster map.
Rick?
Yeah.
Someone is asking, like, how do you get that cluster? I've seen it on MyHeritage.
We'll get to there. I've got the slides.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But what I'm going to do is to do an actual run of pulling a real one through first.
Okay, great.
But I will get back to exactly how you get down there, because each one of those has a slightly different tweak to it. And I'll get into covering that when I go into how do you go out and grab just one match to add to an existing paint. Like I've done a paint, now I found a new match. How do I add him in? How do I add her in to find out how she relates? So now we'll go back to this one, because if you did this, and I'm not plugging Genetic Affairs for any other reason than I like the name. But it's a one-stop shop. You just click on the file, the HTML file, and you skip that second step and you go right into, okay, generate the cluster, generate the chromosome map. And this becomes the chromosome map of the cluster. Now you'll notice that it has, in this case, 22 chromosomes. If within this cluster there was people with that I shared X with, they would also show up here. And the key is giving you a color breakdown of what cluster by cluster. If we go into, and we'll go into some of the toys. If you hit on the DNA painter, if you hit the plus, it explodes every chromosome. So you can see exactly details, person by person who's participating in this and what's going on. I generally do this one at a time. There are some other little things that Johnny has added into here. Traits and medical NPs, SNPs. We can just look at that for a quick one. All of a sudden, we have little balloons showing up all through here. Skin pigmentation, earwax. Which relative did you get your earwax from? Eye color, freckles, muscle composition. Blonde hair. Does it show here, or are you genetically Clairol? But this is part of the tweaks that he keeps adding into here, and he keeps adding more traits. Turn those off. There are other things in here that are of interest. When you get a picture you like, if you download the picture, you can then print it off and you have all kinds of things going on. But let's explode specifically number 5. This is number 5. Guess what? I know who these people are. Barbara is my cousin. If I click on the line that she's on and hit edit the match, I can move Barbara and all 5 segments, not just the one sitting here, but everywhere she lives. and I can create a new group, and the group name I can call since she's a cousin on my maternal grandmother's side, and I know she's maternal, I let her have her own color, and I can say add and edit all of her segments, save the match. What's going to happen? Barbara goes down into the maternal side. She's no longer up here in this group that's shares that are both. Same thing here with Karen. Karen's her daughter. I can edit this match, move Karen. I can select the same group. I can put her in that same group. I can leave it very high, add notes, save the match. It's done. They're both down here now instead of being in the great beyond. Brad, I can edit the match. I can move Brad. He's got 15 segments. I know exactly who he is. I can create a new group. Give him a new color. And I happen to know he's paternal. Save the match. That's how you start moving people around and putting your paternal and your maternal people together. Again, looking here, other than the fact they have the same last name, they're sharing the same DNA. They've got to be the same. And so you move them around, and then you end up with less in the anybody's land, and you've got maternal and paternal, so that when you add somebody in here into the shared or both, you have good decision making as to where they should be, if they should be paternal or maternal, where you need to do your genealogy, where you need to look to see where they belong. Now, as I promised, we'll stop this share and we'll go back and look at, now that we have a painting, how do we add a few flourishes? And flourishes are new relatives. Oh, it's this one. Excellent. So you have your map. To add a new relative, you're sitting on any map. There's this button up here, up the upper corner that says paint a new relative, paint a new match. That's what you click to bring somebody new in. It doesn't matter if they share 1 chromosome, 5 chromosomes, or if they happen to share just the X chromosome, you can do it. And then they get painted in. And then you'll have a roadmap that you can then attribute to an ancestor line. Because then you can look at them with the ones that you know and say, they match here. I'm going to look to see if they're possibly that one. Now, DNA Painter allows direct uploads to paint from 23andMe's match list, MyHeritage, Family Tree DNA, and GEDmatch. as Ben pointed out in his presentation to the Huron County group, you can upload the entire match list of everything that you have from those groups. And there are instructions on in DNA Painter on how to do that. And they go, and they're all there. And it gets really a lot of work to straighten it out after it's done. But once you have your matches, you then want to go out and somebody new shows up and bring them in. GEDmatch, you choose a kit. You open up your kit, you look at your matches, you pick one, you go to one-on-one comparison, you enter that kit number, you go position only, you leave everything else alone, you copy it, you paste it, you're done. GEDmatch. It's free, or slight fee if you want the deluxe version. But you go in to just the one-to-many match. You key in your number and say, let me see my matches. Again, this only works with autosomal DNA. It's never going to work with your mitochondrial DNA. It's never going to work with your Y-DNA. You'll then get a list of all your matches. Pick the one that you just got and say, I want to paint this into one that I know and try to figure out who they are. Copy down both kit numbers. Then you go to the one-on-one autosomal comparison. You key in the two kit numbers. Position only. Hit enter. You get this crazy little box that tells you pretty much nothing unless you're a geneticist. Well, you just highlight the whole all the box, headings included, Control C, copy it, whatever the equivalent is on a Mac. That's all you do, copy everything out of there, all in once. You then immediately go in to DNA Painter. You hit the Paint a New Match. This box shows up. You click right here, Control V, paste. It pastes the whole thing in there. You don't have to worry about what it says. DNA Painter knows. And you click Save the Match Now. You answer a few questions because Johnny wants to make life easier for you. I know how I'm connected to this match, or I have no idea. I'm trying to figure it out. You put in who it is. If you know, you're like, this person emailed me and I don't know, you put in their email address. 23andMe. Everybody does it differently. You have to scroll to the bottom of the screen under the friends and family. I mean, really to the bottom of the screen. And you see an advanced DNA comparison. You click it. You make sure your test is the primary test. You enter a test subject to the second person. You click compare. You scroll down. You get the same kind of information in a box. You highlight it, you paste it. Family tree DNA process. You sign on to your DNA account. You click the matches. You choose the match by putting a check mark in a box in front of their name. You use their chromosome browser. It's right above where everybody else is involved. You click detailed segment data, you scroll down. You copy all the entries and you paste it in the new box. Now, on to the question with MyHeritage. MyHeritage is just a little bit different. And I think they tried to make things hidden. But in MyHeritage, you click on DNA and Tools. In the DNA tools, you'll see 3 tools. This is where you click to create the auto cluster. You just hit explore here on auto cluster, and it's going to say, do you want to do this? And you say, yeah, why do you think I clicked there? There are no options in MyHeritage. It just gives you what it's determined you need to see, or what levels and what controls you want, and it will email you the results. But this is where the auto cluster is created out of MyHeritage. To do a chromosome, to get and pick off the information necessary for DNA Painter, you go to this one, the chromosome browser, and you hit explore, which you'll then see a list of, hopefully this is you as the number 1 person. And then you'll see all your matches. You click on a match that you want to then paint. I've picked my cousin ST because I know who Stephanie is. You hit compare. It comes back and says, okay, you and Stephanie share 6 segments. And here they are, aren't they nice? Again, you scroll to the bottom, you find this advanced options. You click it. It'll create a CSV file. Remember, we talked CSV files before. What happens when you click on a CSV file? It opens in Excel or whatever your default spreadsheet program is. All you do is you highlight the populated columns and rows. Hit copy. In DNA Painter, you paint a new match. The box opens up. You click up here and you hit paste. All that stuff, and you really don't care what all this is saying at the moment. Save the match now. And then in detail, you can say, I know how I'm connected to this match. This is ST. I'm gonna, she is ST. You can, if you really know who it is, you can tell whether they're on the paternal side or the maternal side, or I don't know. You can give them whatever color is appealing to you and say, save the match. They appear in your painting. As now, here's Stephanie. Any questions?
Yes, I was just trying to unmute myself here. Okay, there are a couple of questions. One person said they only have Ancestry, so can they not use DNA Painter, or what do they have to do?
Okay, Ancestry became a little bullheaded and told third-party tools, butt out. Denied them any access. Genetic Affairs was doing a land office business, getting into Ancestry and creating all kinds of reporting out of it. The only way you can really use Ancestry information, you can download your raw data. And again, if we look at, remember, you can, who goes into DNA Painter? We have GEDmatch and DNA GEDcom. GEDmatch and DNA GEDcom are third-party tools that everybody starts uploading their DNA into. You can upload your Ancestry DNA into it, and if you know of other matches that are there, or you can get your other matches to load in there. in my case, I had a cousin who I wanted to see their matches. And we'll go into this in the next step of how we did it. But I had them upload into DNA GEDcom, and from there I could download into Painter, because I had them upload their ancestry raw data into DNA GEDcom, at which point it becomes available to download. That's the only way you can get it, Ancestry.
So Ancestry does allow you to take that raw data and put it into GEDmatch.
Yes, once that raw data is yours. If you have DNA test at Ancestry, one of the first things I preach at the DSGR DNA special interest group is, you paid for it, they didn't, download it, it's yours.
Okay.
Do not give them the rights to it. Do not give them the holding of it. If for whatever reason they have a problem and it's gone, that data, that configuration of what your DNA looks like isn't going to change. You own it. You paid big bucks for it. Take it, have it on your computer. Keep it on your computer. You only have to download it once because it's never going to change. And then you can upload it into any third-party tool. There are a number of third-party tools out there that you can upload into. You can upload your Ancestry raw file into MyHeritage.
So really the only thing you can't do if you have Ancestry is you cannot download the match list.
Right. They're
Okay.
proprietary on that.
Okay.
Now, we again, within our DNA special interest group, we did a whole 2 hours on how to dissect Ancestry's match list and how to really get in deep into that. And that's a wonderful topic. Some people are in it and really aren't comfortable with how to use it. Ancestry's position is that you don't need it because we've given you all these tools. And some of the tools are not exactly accurate, but some of them are and can be used very, very productively. That answered the question.
Yes. Okay. I think the other questions are for the end.
Okay. We can go back into the real version of DNA Painter, because that's where the fun is. Remember back when I said that beginning screen when we all said hello, that pretty picture was 23andMe, everybody? It really was. This is 23andMe. This is everybody on my 23andMe match list. And again, looking at this, just running your mouse over it, you're seeing things. But quite honestly, my eyes aren't that good. It's easier to explode just one chromosome. And then I scan down to say, do I know who any of these people, can I draw any conclusions of any of these people? Can I move them somewhere? Now, notice that I have moved a number of people to unknown maternal, unknown paternal, to my grandparents, the Davis Ricards, to my maternal grandmother, the Kuntz family, to my maternal grandparents, because I couldn't divide them up. We'll get into that. Weaver Kuntz. Now, one of the tricks of this whole process you can turn off people. I don't want to see my unknown maternals. You click on the key. I don't want to see my unknown paternals. I'm really not interested in the Davis-Ricard family. So now all I am seeing are the unknowns, the Kuntzes and the Weavers. Remember when I said the xDNA will show up if you had some? Well, on 23andMe, it's 23. Now, I'm male. Where did my xDNA come from? Mom. If someone shares xDNA with me, they're on my maternal side, guaranteed. And in this case, I have a Kuntz cousin here, and then I have all these people that line up with her. Now I'm going to go up the Kuntz X line, up my grandmother's X ancestors, and try to find if these people possibly could belong there. That's my search pattern. This is what this is telling me. When you have knowns, you look for matches. Cheryl looks like she's a direct match. And again, look at all these people. That's a direct lineup. I would say these are all somehow related in the same way. These are conclusions you can draw when you start looking at things. One of my other cousins and one of the reasons that I spend the $50 a year is I like to divide things up and put things together. And sometimes I'll just start grabbing one match and put them in, and another match and put them in. And well, I've matched on all sites. So any site that I can go out and get a match on, I will put them in. I will grab them and add them. And sometimes I will take and match 23andMe, Family Tree DNA, and MyHeritage participants into the same paint and just see how they all shake out, which is what this one happens to be. Now, in this case, I'm going to turn off the Davis-Ricard, the DeRoches and the Weavers. And we're going to look at cluster 8. Now in cluster 8, this is paternal line. I've already figured out this one. This is my paternal cousin. It's my cousin Jane. This is an unknown that I painted in. Wow. Offhand, I'd say Jane's sibling, Jane's child. Any which way, they definitely belong to Jane. I can do the same. Click here, edit the match. I can move them. I can reduce my thing as possible. I'm not absolutely sure. Save the match. And now how do they fit is aligned in the paternal side. To turn people back on, you just click again. one more look at using Painter, because it's more than, like I said, it's more than just a pretty picture. This is a paint that I started with my cousin Barbara, and back along 5 years ago, there was an email from somebody saying, you and my wife share 364 centimorgans of DNA. She doesn't know who her father is. Can you tell her? And I'm going, not me. But I'm going, I really don't know. So what I did, I'm going to turn off everybody in this one, except for Barbara and cousin. And now we look at this paint. And with the exception of this little spot here in chromosome 11, there is no lineup. I would have expected, if she was on my maternal side, there would be a whole lot more lining up, considering that Barbara and I and she and I share about the same number of centimorgans. So I drew the conclusion that VSH must be my paternal cousin. That's where I started my investigation. That's where we progressed from there. But that's how that goes. Another tactic, we can turn off her and turn on this one. Remember back on our very first start off where we were talking about the pedigree chart, the ancestral tree, and we were looking at it and it was like, well, there's me, there's my father, my mother, my grandparents. Remember your DNA, all of your DNA, every centimorgan of your DNA came from your mother and father. Now, every centimorgan of your mother's DNA came from her mother and father. And every centimorgan of your father's DNA came from his mother and father. By extrapolation, every centimorgan of DNA in your body came from your maternal grandmother and grandfather, your paternal grandmother and grandfather, nobody else. Ever wonder who's who in the zoo? Well, once you're able to segregate paternal and maternal, you start bringing relatives that are paternal and paternal together, or maternal together. We're going to look at chromosome 5. This is Barbara and Mike. Mike and I share maternal DNA only. He is my half-brother. We have the same mother, different fathers. Barbara is our cousin through our maternal grandmother. This DNA here, Mike shares. This DNA here, Mike shares. So this DNA that Mike and I have and Barbara has all came from grandma. This DNA that Mike, Barbara, and I all have came from grandma. This is maternal DNA only. We've already isolated it to maternal only. This DNA here, and this DNA here did not come from grandma. Where did it come from? It's maternal DNA. There's only one option. It came from grandpa. let's take a look at how Blaine explained it. Same mapping. We have Mike and Barbara, and for grins here, we have Karen. But we'll look at this. Again, right here, this came from Grandma. All this came from Grandma because Barbara and I share it. Mike and I share it. So this that Mike and I share and Barbara shares, pure Grandma. These pieces that Mike and I share, that Barbara and Mike and I don't share, had to only come from Grandpa. So now when I map somebody into this map and they show up here and only in this piece or in this piece down here and they're maternal, I can draw the conclusion that they come from my maternal grandfather's family. I can forget about researching my maternal grandmother's family, that it can only come from my maternal grandfather's family. And just to make it totally confusing, this is what it looks like. Blaine Bettinger did a presentation on it and calls it deductive chromosome mapping. It's based on the fact that you, one, are able to isolate the chromosomes into maternal or paternal, and it works either way. That you can have relatives that you know are from one set of grandparents and not the other, and you realize that you came from just the two grandparents in the maternal, and then you isolate out the grandparent. A very powerful tool. It tells me where to start looking. So we can end with another ad, plus a thank you from me for having me here. And please join us at the next DSGR DNA SIG, Special Interest Group. We'll be announcing it on our website. Hopefully, we'll be back in the library soon, and COVID will make it safe for us all to get together again and explore the DNA options within genetic genealogy. DSGR would like to invite everyone on 9 January to join us for Catherine Lake Hogan, who will be our speaker on maximizing the Library and Archives of Canada website. It will be a virtual presentation. And again, check our website that week before the 9th for the general invitation that you can just click on and get registered for this session. On June 12th, COVID pandemic permitting, is our annual bus trip to the Genealogy Center at the Allen County Public Library in Fort Wayne, Indiana. We all pile into a bus, drive down to Allen County, Indiana, and we research at the second largest genealogical holding in the nation, the largest genealogical center east of the Mississippi. Hopefully we'll be able to do it this year, and stay tuned on our website for announcements. And for that, any questions?
Okay, I can ask, there's a couple here. David just wanted to let people know that the National Geographic DNA closed down and the GEDcoms are no longer available there. Here's a kind of a trick question. What company do you recommend to have a Y-DNA test done for a 94-year-old man?
There's only one, Family Tree DNA.
Yeah, they're the only ones that do the Y, yeah.
Yes. Living DNA claims they can do Y, but they don't. Family tree DNA is the only one that really does Y DNA. It's the only one that really does mitochondrial DNA.
Okay, another one is, can a professional genealogist use this DNA painter for clients?
God, I hope so. You did notice the initials after my name. The APG stands for the Association of Professional Genealogists.
Okay, here's another one. If you put a person into a new group, how do you keep track of what cluster they belong to?
Again, when you name them, you can name them and put them in as saying, you know, so-and-so, so-and-so, CL1. Or you can adopt the color of the cluster. Either way works.
Okay, David had a question. He might have to explain it a little better. He's saying, if I am related or not sure if I'm related to an individual who is connected to 2 branches in this tree, I assume, and because of that, it increases the centimorgan count. So how will the shared centimorgan tool work?
It will work by following the discussion of that exact problem. Luckily, my being a cousin, my own cousin, goes back so many generations that it's not that close of a relationship. I think I'm my own 10th cousin. But if you're your own 3rd cousin or 2nd cousin, the closeness of the relationship will shoot up the centimorgans, and it's a factor. That's where the higher levels of the factor comes in, of the range.
Okay, is that okay, David, or did you have something else to add there?
No, that sounds good. Thanks.
Okay, okay. The other question was, you know, when you were starting out with the tree, this person wants to know, can you show us where the icon is for downloading from GEDmatch?
Sure. Let me get back into it.
I think it was the tree she's talking about. It was early.
Mm-hmm. Painter. This one. Yeah, we'll just go back into DNA Painter. On the dashboard, ancestral trees. When you create a new tree, really, if you just want to create it, you can upload your family tree. You just click here.
Okay.
If you're into the tree for whatever reason, and you want to load another one, it's up here in the upper right corner. It says load GEDcom.
Okay. Here's a question. My mother is deceased, but I have a sample of her hair. Or can one get DNA from a hair sample?
Hopefully she left you a lot of money because it's expensive. It also requires the roots of the hair. It's not just the hair. You've got to be able to have the root of the hair. And I mean, a lot of the TV shows are just showing someone took hair clippings and that's what it happens. Well, it's embedded more, but they're making more and more progress on doing it from objects. And there are all kinds of groups on Facebook that deal with this, that are bringing up all of the new things that are happening. You need to sign up for them and keep abreast of them, because things are happening that 2 years ago, no, that'll never happen. They're happening. People are asking now, like their parents and grandparents, they have the letters that were sent during World War II. Can I get DNA from the letter? And it's coming closer and closer to becoming a financially possible reality. Word of warning. Take it from the stamp, not the envelope. The soldier never sealed the envelope. The censor did. The soldier licked the stamp, stuck it on, but the censor had to go through the letter to make sure they weren't giving out any information they couldn't, and then the censor sealed the envelope. So there are things you have to be careful of when you start testing inanimate, objects, not people. If your grandmother has any other relatives of her generation, test them. Because if she has any living siblings that are willing to test, you're going to get as good a hit as if you tested her.
Okay, Tammy is just clarifying her question about professional use of DNA. She's saying, in other words, do you have to ask permission to use it for clients, or just go ahead and use it?
Just go ahead and use it.
Okay.
There is no restriction on what you're putting out there. I mean, I've got stuff for clients, I've got stuff for me, I've got stuff for friends.
And nobody can see
There
it
is
but
no
you,
restriction.
right?
Right.
I
And
have
I
a
pay my
question about,
$50 a year.
yeah, about that. You were showing the traits that you could click on that little trait button.
Yeah,
Is that
wasn't that cool?
is that only because of 23andMe, or can you do that?
No, that's not. No, that's everybody.
Oh, often wonder
That's
where
any paint.
Huh, okay, great.
That's
I think that's all
any
the
painting.
questions.
You go into options.
Yeah. Okay.
And his traits are more fun than 23andMe's.
I don't see any other questions. David, do you have anything else to add for questions?
Not myself. Let me get my school off there. Oh gosh. It's surprising to see yourself on the screen. No, I just, as he's going through there, I'm thinking of all the things, I was playing around with DNA Painter for about a week, but I think I just scratched the surface. After seeing this presentation, I think I'll need to expand my 6 months subscription to a year just to get through everything. But no, very informative. Sounds like a lot of good material to get started on.
I cannot recommend enough going on to Facebook and looking for the DNA genetic genealogy groups. There are a couple of them, one of which Blaine is the chair of. Fascinating information, keeping you up to date on what's going on in the world of genetic genealogy.
Well, we're getting thank yous and excellent presentation. They want to know, can they watch the presentation again? And I'm just going to answer that myself. It will be on the Essex branch YouTube channel. So just go to YouTube and Google Essex County branch of Ontario Genealogical Society and you'll find it.
Well, if that's all, I really want to thank Rick for not just the time tonight, but all the time he's gone through just to prepare for this and watching other DNA Painter presentations as well. So I'm sure our YouTube viewers will be more than 200 as people go back to it to double check different screens and things like that. At one point, I think we had over 60 some odd viewers tonight, which I think is a record for us anyway. So that there seems to be a lot of interest out there.
Just to give everybody an idea of how much Johnny Pearl changes this tool, I had to change it 3 times since David first asked me to do this. I had to go back and update 3 times.
And now that we have a tape of this, you'll be able to just use the tape over again for the next presentation. So, yeah.
Not if Johnny keeps updating the thing.
That's true too. Anyway, let me, can I steal the screen here and show my one last slide, if that's okay with you, or unless there's any other questions? Okay, I will try to. I assume
People are saying best presentation I have heard. Thank you, interesting, knowledgeable speaker. And I'll be watching you on YouTube. Thank you from Albany, Oregon. Oregon, yeah.
Yeah. Linda, for the upcoming event, you're the one that reached out to Lorraine. Do you want to talk about the upcoming event in February?
Have you got the screen with that has the...
Is it not showing? I was hoping it... No, it's not showing. Oh, okay. What happened there? It's not...
Coming.
Is it coming now?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, Lorraine is the assistant curator at the Amherstburg Freedom Museum. And she's... Oh, we lost...
Sorry. I clicked the wrong button there.
And she's going to give a talk on, I don't know if you've ever looked at their webpage, but they have family histories on their webpage. And there are a lot of work has been done on all of these different families in the area. And Lorraine's just going to talk about, from the outside looking in, paying tribute to Essex County's Black Canadian families. And she's going to talk about the research that she did and some of the different things that she found that might help other researchers. It'll be good.
Yes, looking forward to it. Well, with that, I again thank you, Rick, for all the time that you put into this, and I hope well, you'll be able to go and view it later, but and hopefully maybe I'll see you in January with your January 9th presentation. So, okay, I think that's a wrap. How do we shut this off?
Good night, everybody. Good night.
Good night.